Good evening, everybody. It's great to be together for our joint meeting. It's been a long time coming. I am Maxine Wild, the mayor of Olivette, and I'm sitting here with Rob Jurgel, who is the chair of the Pcdc. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's Thursday, April 27th at 7 o'clock in the Olivette City Center and in council chambers. And we're here tonight for a joint meeting, and we're really thrilled. So thank you. Can we take the roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Carl,
Here.
Councilmember Knox,
Here.
Chairman Pro Tim Waltman,
Here.
Mayor Wild,
Here.
and I'll let the meeting minutes reflect that right now. Councilmember Clark is not in.
He's absent with excuse.
Okay, absent. Chairman,
Here.
Chairman Drago is here. Vice Chairman Wagner,
Definitely here.
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Present.
Commissioner Daniel Rosenberg,
Present.
Commissioner Lewis,
Present.
and I'll let the meetings reflect that Commissioner Rich is attending virtually. He's on virtually.
Here.
Right now.
Next item, please, is introduction. Then I'm going to turn it over to Beth Quindry from Shockey Consulting.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. We're really excited that you're here together too, because this doesn't probably happen all that often that you have meetings together. Does it ever happen? I'm not sure that it would in a normal course of things, right? In history, it has. Yeah. Nothing. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's really important to our process that you all are together tonight. So the Pcdc is the body that's going to adopt your comprehensive plan, but the city council is going to be very active in implementing the plan, funding the plan, aspects of the plan. And so we're really interested in having a collaboration between the two bodies as we move forward, so everyone knows what our process is and what the issues are that are emerging, and so we're all on the same page when it comes time to adopt and then implement the plan, and we're all excited about that. So that is what we are working toward. So I'm Beth Quindry with Shockey Consulting. So I believe I've met everyone before. And Gabby Dambeck has been with me from Shockey in the past. Our new face is April Snee. She's here from our Kansas City office. And she's our planning lead out of Kansas City. So we're excited that she's been here. It's been fun to see her in person instead of on Zoom. So we are enjoying that. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to change slide, put the slides on, and okay, yeah. I'm like, yeah, 3 things at once: microphone, clicker, computer. See if I can handle it. We'll go over our agenda for tonight in just a second here. Aha, there we go. So the purpose is really to tell you, give you an update on the planning process so far, give you an overview about what it will involve overall, little update on community engagement. You know, we're just early getting started, but we'll give you a little flavor of what we've heard from our first advisory committee meeting, and also a little bit about our community survey. We'll introduce some ideas that I think are going to be very familiar to you that are emerging as themes from the vision questions that we're asking. So we'll share some of that with you and get your early thoughts on them. And then we're going to talk about trends. So in our first advisory committee meeting, there was a trend exercise that was done. A couple of you got to participate in that, whether you enjoyed it or not. We'll ask you to observe that and give us your comments. But we're going to report on some of the top trends that were identified by the advisory committee as things that we should be thinking about for the comprehensive plan. So you'll hear a little bit about that. And then we're going to have you get into a couple of small groups to have some conversation about some top issue or some categories of issues that are going to impact your plan, and get your thoughts. So we'll talk about housing, transportation, parks, some of those big categories of your plan. And we'll ask you to think about what's been going well over the last 10 years or so, like during the life of your last plan. What successes are you most excited about? And then start to think about what you'd like to see in the future. So that will fill up very compactly our 2 hours. So we'll move a little bit quickly to try to make sure that we fit it all in. But that's the plan. So let's talk briefly about the just comprehensive planning. And I think this is not new information to you. I'm going to offer this as just a framework for how we think about the comprehensive plan. And then think about it also as, talking points when you're in the community and talking to people about this. And I think PCDC has probably heard this exact content before, so just bear with me for a minute. But comprehensive plans define the community's vision for the future. I think of all the things, as you hired us, I think that's what you need most from the process, is to have a really good understanding of what your community wants. You believe in your last comprehensive plan. I hear you use it all the time as PCDC deliberates, as the city makes decisions. You just need fresh public input to feel confident in what that vision is. Comprehensive plan considers all the aspects of a community: housing, that's why it's comprehensive, housing, transportation, goods and services, buildings. Your last plan really focused on Olive Boulevard. That was a very deliberate, at the time, because the Olive was struggling in a way that it is not now. I mean, I think there are still improvements that people are expressing they want to have happen, but it's a different place than it was in 2006. So that plan really focused on Olive. I think you'll see this plan be a little bit more reflective of the city as a whole, just based on the feedback that we're getting from all of you so far and from the city. Not as focused on Olive, but Olive's sort of the heart of your community, so it's going to still be there. Public input, a lot of public input, and not just from the public, but from decision makers and stakeholders like the advisory committee. And I want to compliment Carlos on putting together a really great advisory committee, because I feel like the conversation that we had the first time really reflected a lot of different opinions, and some not entirely supportive of, the standard, I don't know, they're just different voices, but they could talk to each other, and that's exactly what you want. So really felt like it was a good representation of different voices in your community. So that's an important part of public involvement too. And Gabby's going to give you a little rundown on all the public involvement activities here in a second. But the comprehensive plan is also going to provide a framework for your decision making going forward. It's not going to make decisions for you. It's the guidance that you can kind of hang your hat on. So as you get developments that are not consistent with your community's vision, you have this to go on. So that's a little bit about comprehensive planning. Some things it's not. It's not an instrument of immediate change. Some people think that the trucks are going to come out and they're going to start overhauling streets and construction is going to happen. And it's not immediate. It's like this, but it's also very relevant. So it's hard to explain that to people, that it's had huge impact on the shape of your community, but it's not all going to happen tomorrow. It's a 20-year plan, 15 to 20-year plan. It's not going to replace the market. Sometimes people, you get people excited about what do you want in a community, and they're like, I want Shake Shack, and you're like, well, so we can't, we don't get to say that, but we can make policies and set the table in a way that makes us more attractive to certain kinds of development. It's not zoning. So I think those are 3 common misperceptions you hear from the public. So we like to mention them so you kind of sort of have those at your fingertips. So you last plan was in 2006, was focused on Olive. There were these 4 pillars that you're probably familiar with: community development, economic development, transportation connections, and public space. So we're taking a hard look at this plan and all of your existing plans. Another way in which comprehensive plans are so very comprehensive is that they're going to look at the Parks Master Plan, and they're going to look at this comp plan. So we're not just putting this to the side and saying, it's irrelevant. We're going to look at it and pick up the pieces that make sense for what the community is thinking now. So we have this outlines our decision-making process and kind of shows you how you're involved. So you're that orange line at the next to the bottom. So we're on the 27th of April. And we're with you. So this is your first meeting. When you come back, what you'll be looking at is recommendations. So we're going to talk about vision tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about issues and firm some of that up. And then when we come back to you in, is it August or September? September. Then it's recommendations for a draft plan. So lots of work to be done between now and then, and lots of community conversations to be had. But you'll have another workshop like this where you're together. But we really hope you'll be involved in other aspects of the process too. So some of you serve on the advisory committee and you're doing that. I hope all of you come to the workshop on May 18th. Or if you can't, send 10 people who can. We really want to try to get a lot of the community out. For that, we're putting a big push on that over the next month to really get the word out. So Gabby's going to give you a little update on engagement to just give you an overall sense of what we're doing now and what's coming up.
Yes. So we've got lots of stuff in our community engagement plan, and this kind of serves as our guideline for how we want to connect with everyone. So you can see we have 3 major groups of people. I was going to try to use the laser and be fancy, but it doesn't work. We have our city leadership and city staff who are having management meetings. We're seeing them every couple weeks to talk about what's going on. We have our community groups like the advisory committee. We're going to be doing some focus groups and stakeholder interviews later on as well. And we have the public, and that's where we get to do all of the fun stuff like the community workshop, the digital engagement platform, which is our website, olivettecomplan.com, which I hope all of you have been looking at and participating in. And then we have our pop-up events, which Rise has been, they're our project partner on this, and they've been helping us out with reaching out into the community to make sure everyone's participating. And so this is our homepage on our website. If you haven't seen it, the QR code up there takes you right to it. I know a lot of you have seen this slide before, but I just want to make sure everybody knows that that's happening, and we want everybody to check it out. And also we have our first survey, the community vision survey, where we talk about vision and issues for Olivette. If you haven't taken it yet, please do, and encourage all of your friends to as well. And again, there's a QR code up there. You can scan it and go right to the website and check it out. And if you need a little help with that, let me know and I can get you the link, whatever you need. That's what we're doing there. At the very bottom of this page, this is kind of a timeline of how people have visited the site. So every jump is basically when Kiana or I or someone has sent out an e-blast or a social media message letting people know that things are happening on the site. We've had over 1,000 people visit the website in total, and we're very excited about that. We have a couple other activities that we've been promoting as well, including some topical activities that we're going to be, and Kiana's been helping me with this, advertise on social media through e-blast. So every couple weeks or every week, really, we're going to be sending out an e-blast, letting people know that these are happening. We have some really fun mapping activities. Tell us what you love in Olivette. Tell us what you'd like to improve. So check these out while you're at it. The responses on these are less, and we expect them to be so. We have about 200 responses on the vision and issues community survey. But since these are being promoted more specifically online, they will have fewer responses, and we know that we expect that. So not a concern there.
On the community survey, you know, what I want to see by the end is about 350. You know, so we're about to promote the community workshop real heavily. And what we usually see is a nice jump in our surveys if we're promoting a meeting. So we'll keep it open until the end of May. So I might be a little bit ambitious in hoping 350, but we have about 211 last time I looked. And okay, 290. And every time we send out an email or an e-blast, it goes up. And that'll happen a lot as we promote the meeting. So I'm going to still hope for 350. But the important thing actually is the representation that we see within that 350. And I'll tell you right now, it's something that we're watching real carefully, because It's weighted toward almost entirely homeowners. We don't have a lot of renters. Almost everybody is over 35 and most a little bit older than that. We have lower than population in for African Americans. So there are several things that we're watching. The nice thing about having a survey like that is it is a gauge on how our participation is going. So we're doing things to try to fill those gaps. So we're going to do a mailing north of Olive to get people to the workshop. Neighborhood outreach is happening now. So it's a good indicator of how we're doing and where we have missing pieces. And then we'll be tracking those down. So
On the website, is there a spot where you can see which surveys you did and which ones you didn't do?
If I could expand on that, because I was waiting, and there's a reason I think you're asking that. I've had people already say to me, I already did it. I already did it.
I see.
They don't know that there's more. I
Okay.
already did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
to your point,
Everybody, please be reminded to speak in your microphone.
I wish there was a way to see if you've already done it. If you registered for the site, you can always email me and I can check to see if your your username or your email is in one of the submissions, but there's no easy way to tell for yourself. And that's just the host website, the way that it's set up. It's something that we'd have to check on the back end. On some of the activities though, there's like a forum and some like mapping things where you would be able to see like, oh, I put that pin there. Like you'd see your name next to it. So there's some of them that you can see really easily, others not so much.
How many surveys are, thank you, how many surveys are out there right now that are on the website that you can do?
Yeah,
I
so
feel
there's,
like I've done 3, but I just,
yeah, so there's one community survey that we're working on right now as part of the advisory committee or any other thing that you have been on, because I think you're on something else for us too.
right.
You got to do like a homework assignment and some other surveys for that. That might be what you're thinking of. We also had an introductory survey at the very beginning of the project.
Right.
That was different. So in total, we'll have 3 major surveys, the intro one, the vision and issues, and then later on, once we have more like goals and issues to talk about, we'll do another survey towards the end.
And there was one that was really similar in the beginning. Cause then I
Yes.
thought I did it already and then saw the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
and the goal of that initial survey was to do a lot of like getting a lot of emails so that we could start sending out e-blasts and information. So if there's just one for right now, and then just the smaller activities.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say to direct people to the website and say it's the only survey that's on the website. So if they've been to the website and they've done the survey on the website, that's.
There's
the
a
only-
direct link to it to the homepage, on the homepage.
But they could have done the intro one.
Yes,
And
and
that, yeah.
So just
separate.
tell them it's another.
Mhm.
Yeah, if
Okay.
they did
Or-
the introductory survey,
Yeah,
then yes,
okay.
it's a second survey.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's a little confusing. Beth talked a lot about this, but we're really trying to meet the community where they are. We have a lot of things like mailings that we're doing that are really targeting the people who haven't gotten the chance to participate yet. A lot of the events that we're going to are readily populated by people that we're trying to get to the public meeting, get their information. So we're really excited to be seeing everybody out for that. And we really want you guys to invite all of your friends to the public meeting. We're gonna have the city fire, city police are gonna be there doing some activities with, they said there's gonna do a fire safety presentation. They're gonna smoke out the top of the something and they're gonna rescue someone. They said they're gonna rescue a kid. So we're very excited about that. And Olivette police are gonna have their a squad car or something there so kids can get up close and personal with what they're doing as well. So we're really excited to have those guys there with us at the public meeting, and we're hoping it's going to be a draw to that. So I'll let Beth talk about vision.
thanks, Gabby. On our outreach, just something I wanted to tell you about in a little bit of detail, the RISE community development that's a partner for us on engagement. And they're also looking at some housing stuff for us. But they're actually, they've got the list of trustees and neighborhood organizations in Olivette, and they're calling all of them. So sometimes the numbers don't work and they're trying to get better numbers and they're trying to find current, it's hard to stay on top of that information, but they're trying to get a handle on who needs to be contacted so that we leave you with a good list of neighborhood organizations, and they're not just emailing them, they're calling them and trying to set up meetings with leadership, at least by phone, and then extending a personal invitation to the workshop and encouraging them to come and meet Carlos and all of you fine people who really care about what they think. So we're trying to establish some, get some new faces to your workshop, and then leave you with some relationships past the plan. So that's what we're hoping, and they're working really hard at it.
And we will have yard signs
Not yet.
as another means. no,
Oh, we
not
will.
now,
We will.
As another means for the May 18th.
Yeah, we will.
They are in production.
Yeah. Okay, and as an aside, Gabby and April and I got to slide down the fire slide today. When they were showing us what we're gonna do at the public meeting. Okay, so vision, share a little bit about what we've heard so far on vision. And the big I thing is here is just telling you vision is long-term. We're looking out 15 to 20 years, so we can really think about some bigger changes that could happen over that time. But the next slide has a word cloud of what we've heard from our vision question on the survey. This is the community survey. So you all did, some of you did a survey for us leading up to this meeting. This is these are the results from the community-wide survey that we have 219 responses on. I think these results came from a little while ago, so maybe not quite that many, maybe more like 200 here. But you see some themes that I think are probably going to be familiar to you, because they're things I've heard from your elected officials going back to their goal setting last year, things I've heard from the advisory committee. Walkable, diverse, safe, community, sustainable, friendly. So these are, the bigger these words are, the more that they were mentioned. So we had a couple questions in that community survey, and they were like, fill in the blank. You know, Olivette will be known for blank, and it's a place where you can blank. And so based on those answers, that's where this came from. So just to look at some specific comments to give you a little bit of flavor from what we heard. So these are open-ended responses, so people just get to elaborate what they would like to say. In the upper left, I think it summarizes a lot of what we heard in the community survey, and it's what the city council told us last year when we did goal setting and did some vision work with them. Olivette's a livable city because of amenities, finances, schools, safety, and walkability, and it continues to be the center of growth, diversity, and inclusion. And we heard pieces of that a lot from the public too. So that's good that it's all kind of lining up. But comments on what we have heard so far and what jumps out to you. And this is really important because, you know, the vision is the foundation for your comprehensive plan. We really need to kind of articulate this through our process and pick out, you know, a lot of this is, we'll really need to fine tune it so that it leaves you with a clear sense of what people want. So we're not there yet, but this is the work so far. Anything jumping out at anybody? Oh yeah, Missy, what do you think?
Was the one that says the same as it was when I moved here. And the other one, that the blue one up at the upper right, were a mishmash. It needs cohesive look and a mix of old apartments and disparate buildings. I need to hear those things.
Yeah, and they were the minority of comments. I as we were putting together the slide, I was like, we have to have at least one because it wasn't all, this is great.
I was struggling to find a good negative.
But it was, yeah.
And that says something, and that's a nice
Yeah.
thing to hear, but at the same time,
Yeah,
there's something there. Yeah.
yep. Yeah,
So I grew up in all of that. And I really wonder if my parents' generation would have described Olivette in the 50s with many of the same terminology.
Mhm.
It was what is it today that's different for us that that's different than it was in the 1950s? Because I think a lot of that terminology, while it may be true today, it's a question of really what does it mean?
Mhm.
Because how does it affect you? How do we see a difference on the ground?
Mhm.
Because I think in many ways, our parents would have described all of that in those same words.
This way.
Because in the 50s, that's really what it was for them.
Mhm.
And that's why they chose to live here,
Yeah.
build here. Build here, right,
Right. It was a developing community at that time.
right.
Yeah.
But I know when I first, I first looked at houses and ended up buying here. I mean, one of the thoughts I had was this community really does need a lot of work. And, but my parents who lived here, were probably thinking, well, this is a great place. I'm thinking, well, yeah, but it could be a hell of a lot better, and I think, but I think what's important is that those things are good to say, but we need to articulate
decide what they mean,
mean
right?
for us
Yes.
today.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, and that's something we're thinking about as we go into the workshop. What do you want to walk to? What's walkable? And what are you willing to do for it? Because it has their trade-offs there, and so we'll try to get more of that as we go into the workshop, to understand what we hear a lot about wanting amenities like restaurants and retail and entertainment. And so we'll ask questions too about what kind of restaurants are you looking for? And what is that? What do you mean when you say you want more of that? And it might result in a little more traffic for you. And is that okay? So we'll try to have a good conversation so we get a better sense of what we mean by some of these fuzzy words. Yeah.
One of the most fuzzy that you had up there is sustainability. Talking
Mhm.
economic sustainability, environmental sustainability,
Mhm.
a combination of both.
Mhm.
When you talk about environmental sustainability, are you talking about any kind like plastic recycling? Or are you specifically talking about CO2 and climate change?
Yeah.
And how to prioritize, because they're all important, but
Mhm.
some may be more important than others, and the city may not have infinite finances to
Mhm.
fund everything. So
Mhm. Yeah. So you're right. Like, again, these need to be articulated so we know what we're talking about. And your plan's going to have recommendations that get very detailed and be prioritized in terms of the time that they would be implemented. So that's all part of the process. This is the reaction to the vision. So it's real, it's way up here. It's way up here. Yeah. So it's a start. Okay, so we are going to talk to you a little bit about the trends that we heard when we were with the advisory committee. So we do this trend exercise because it helps us to think long term and about things that we might have to deal with over the life of the plan. So we don't just make up these trends; they actually come from the American Planning Association. Through research that they do that we acquire and take advantage of. So there are different categories of trends. And then when we worked with the advisory committee, they did about 22 of the trends, looked through about 22. So there were 3 groups of them and they looked through it. So they played a game. And they had a game board that looked like this picture on the screen. So they had these 22 cards that they were going to look at and then decide which trends were going to be high certainty and high impact or have less of an impact on Olivette. So we wanted to share with you the trends that landed in their high priority and high impact quadrant, which are the most relevant to the planning effort. And get just show them to you and see what you think. So April's going to actually walk through the cards so you understand what they did. And I'm looking, let's see, Right, where's the clicker? Do I have it? Okay, oh, sorry. It's late for me. Okay, like, let's go to the next one so we can see all, there we go. Okay. Sorry. I know it's too many things. So we looked at 22 trends. They picked, we did an analysis. Actually, Carlos did a more really detailed analysis that we pulled from to look at what the most popular trends were. So the ones in green were the ones that were determined to be the most impactful. And that's what April's going to walk through. And just an aside here, I know the red text for micro mobility, that was largely discarded. So micro mobility is like last mile transportation, like scooters and things like bike share. And so that was determined not to be something that was likely to happen in the future. So that's why that's red, but.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go through and just talk about sort of like Beth mentioned, a lot of these are like national trends that of course we're looking at, but of course taking them into consideration of what is happening in the region and also, you know, how is that impacting all of that, of course. So one of the first ones that came out on top was this idea of nature-based solutions and green infrastructure. And so I'll just talk a little bit about what that means big picture. And, you know, one thing you may think of is with green infrastructure are things like rain gardens, green roofs, permeable pavement, different ways that we can treat our stormwater that's a little bit different than the traditional gray infrastructure that was, you know, the big thing years ago. And part of the reason that this is a trend is because we are seeing not only increased rainwater events, so more rain happening at once, but also the increase of impermeable surfaces with the increased development. You're seeing a lot more, you know, concrete pavements, and that just creates the water to rush off faster into our stormwater systems. And so some of this green infrastructure and nature-based solutions can offer affordable and environmentally sound ways to manage precipitation. And just some more benefits of that in general, maybe more obvious is that you know, healthier environments, improved water quality, while we prevent more stormwater from rushing off of our streets and bringing that, you know, runoff and pollution into our waterways. It, you know, holds water, it lets it absorb into the groundwater, and also can create opportunities for wildlife pockets. You know, we think of pollinators and different benefits that incorporating more green space can have, as well as social ties. Green infrastructure a lot of times is incorporated into our parks. You guys do that here. And so creating, you know, pretty nice green spaces can also create gathering spaces and kind of have co-benefits in that sense. In addition to healthier communities, there's a lot of research out there that shows not only the physical health benefits of, you know, more green space in cities as far as like cleaning air, providing cooler environments, but also improving mental health. And then finally, stronger economies. When we can prevent more flooding, that helps prevent flooding damage, as well as increase or benefiting cost when it comes to stormwater treatment if you're dealing with less in the stormwater system. Another trend that came out on top with the advisory committee was basically boils down to diversity, equity and inclusion. And so again, at a national level, we're seeing an increased diversity in our population. The Pew Research Center states that by 2045, minority population will be majority. And so in Olivette, you guys are already a really great example of this happening. It's a really, really diverse community, already almost at, 50% minority population. It's something interesting in Olivette that we've been noticing, and you may all, I'm sure, be aware of this, but is we have the diversity, but is it inclusive to the whole community? And so there is a bit of a divide from north and south that maybe isn't representative of the whole community if you're looking at it in sections. So this is something that I think the advisory committee felt is going to continue to be impactful and something to keep in mind when we're creating a more inclusive community. Another trend was this idea of,
Did you look at past data by chance to see if the trend is improving or
oh, in terms of
the divide?
the divide? No, we haven't quite yet. This is just from the census, but yeah, we could,
It's my
haven't-
perception that it's
it's improving a little
but
bit.
I don't know if everyone else shares that.
We're talking about the previous slide.
What is improving? And when you say that,
The numbers are becoming more balanced.
Yeah.
A microphones, but also that would be kind of interesting to see from to pose that to the public as far as, do you see that it's improving? Like, I also have that frame of mind as I see people walk down what I call Bruce's Trail on Dealman. I see tons of people walking their animals. However, that's my perception, that's my experience, and is that shared?
I think we use semantics. I think the word improving would be the wrong word to put out to the community. I just think we're looking to see, do people feel like there's a different balance or what's people's perception?
Do they have an
Because-
easier time accessing? Or
No, but do they think that? I don't know, improving might not be the right word.
No, I think you're right.
I think it's got to be, but I think that these percentages might be off. I think that the 68% that is south of Olive is now greater on the north of Olive, and I think that these demographics have shifted a little bit.
Well, this is from the 2020 decennial census.
Okay.
It's not too long ago,
Okay.
but maybe if we went, back to 2010, for example, or estimates in between there, we could look
That would
at.
be very interesting.
Yeah.
could you tell me what that number is on the small purple on the south side of Olive? So
And the purpose, yeah, so I can go through too. On the south side, it's 68% white, 9% Black or African American, 14% Asian, and 9% falling into the other categories. And then for reference, on the north side, it's 33% white, 39% Black or African American, 20% Asian, and 8% other. So jumping back in, one trend that came to the top, and a number of these will kind of have to do with housing. And this first one I'll talk about is this idea of aging in place. And this is largely driven from our baby boomer population, born from 1945 to 65, being our largest senior cohort in history. And this is maybe something you've heard again on a national level, but something I'll get into more specific on all of that on the next slide. But the senior aged cohort is gonna, by 2030, so pretty soon, it's gonna account for 1 in 5 Americans by 2030. But something we're noticing is only about 1% of the nation's housing meets the demands of aging in place. And so when you think about aging in place, it's not only how can I stay in my actual home? You think about modifications or things you can make to your own home or new homes that are, more accessible, but also being able to stay in your community that maybe you've lived in for years and years and years. And so some of the things that can cause, as you get older, things that may affect your needs for living are going to be vision and hearing changes, cognitive decline, as well as mobility limitations and self-care difficulties. So Gabby's over here making eye contact with people. But so there's things to consider not only in housing, but also transportation and goods and services that you'll need with an aging population. And in the region, St. Louis County is about close to 20% is in that 65 plus age range right now. And all of that, that's about 16%. But if you want to include 55 plus, that's closer to 27%. And that's just right now. And so this is a 20-year plan, as we've been talking about. So if you think about adding 20 years onto that, the blue section there is 35 to 54, and that's 28% right now. So you can really start to see the aging population here. And for reference, the median age comparatively to St. Louis County and Missouri, all of that is a little bit older than the surrounding areas. And again, with that comes different sorts of disabilities, and in all of that, the main disabilities of residents fall into this ambulatory difficulty, and that's that mobility, getting around, as well as independent living challenges. The next trend I'll talk about is sort of this idea of not necessarily just population growth, but population change. Over the past decade in the St. Louis Metro, we're seeing this continuation of a trend of people, population gains more on the outlying communities and counties, and coupled with the decline in the inner communities. And so in all of that, you guys have had significant growth in the past 10 years or so. Granted, it's not, huge. We're a small community, but there is growth happening here, especially compared to, the St. Louis County. So some things to consider is, how do we sustain that growth, or how do we make sure our community is continuing to be sustainable in all sorts of ways, and just that, lasting, how are we continuing to provide our city services, housing options, et cetera, if we're continuing to grow, or what is our capacity? And the next one is about housing choice. And this kind of boils down, it's again a national trend, but we're seeing it more localized in this area as well, is this idea of housing choice. And there's this missing middle housing that's really common for a lot of communities. We tend to have either single family homes or these big, high rise or dense apartment complexes that people tend to, get a little scared of when you start talking about multifamily housing. But there's a lot of different options in between. And these can provide great middle, life cycle stages, different affordability levels. And so in Olivette, we have, and this is just sort of a comparison of the past 10 years from the American Community Survey. So these are estimates, but of course, largely a single family homeowner community. But we do have a significant rental population. And here's another breakdown of the north and south divide here. It's sort of considering, what are different housing options? Do we have, space for that? And we'll get into another slide about, because when you provide these missing middle housing types, it also creates more density. If you're having 2, 3, 4 plexes, provide different housing options. And so it's not surprising that another trend that was brought to the top is this idea of increased density in housing types. In the current housing crisis, a lot of homeowners are holding on to their properties. And this could be for a number of reasons, but one of them being going back to that aging in place concept. If you don't have somewhere else to go, maybe you're going to hang on to your house. Or if, you got a good deal on your house and you don't want to sell it at certain times, and you're going to hold on to your house. But we're seeing that this is locking out younger first-time home buyers and the more diverse population that's aging up into that age looking to buy homes. Also, younger first-time home buyers are, of course, suffering from significant debts, largely school, student loan debts, and the rapid cost increase of just about everything, which is making homeownership very unattainable in the short term for a lot of younger generations. One other concept to consider in this sort of density and providing other housing options is this idea of, accessory dwelling units. You may have heard of ADUs, but a lot of other terms used for them are things like granny flats or mother-in-law suites, providing another more affordable housing option, as well as potentially increasing the rental housing stock while helping owners offset their housing costs. So this is something that a lot of cities across the nation are trying to grapple with and see how they can regulate this or not in their communities. And Olivette, you're obviously very, well, we're small, but also very built out. And so this is why this density discussion kind of comes up is, how can we either redevelop or make use of spaces with different types of housing. And there's just some pictures up there to show different kinds of multiplexes, and then that little granny flat, there's options, some you can have on lot, some are above your house or in a garage addition. But these are just some things that we talked about, and I think the advisory committee realizes are trends happening. And so how can we prepare for them if we need to in our community?
For those of you that did the exercise, it was a while ago, but do you have any comments or thoughts on how it worked or what your conclusions were? Or were you surprised by this completely because it was weeks ago?
Those were all of our choices for
Yeah.
our group.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think those were issues that we thought were popular,
Mhm.
that.
You're
that
already
we-
thinking about,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
And some of the challenges that we face with some of like, we had, I think, one developer that was trying to put in more mid-size kind of attached townhouses, but said he couldn't make the economics work
Mhm.
the way it was.
Mhm.
So, whether it was right or wrong, I'm not sure, but that's sometimes what we face with, I think, different developers that
Mhm.
aren't used to building those, developers that are, here in town. So then how do we try to get other developers that have that expertise to come?
Mhm. Mhm.
The other thing
Yeah.
I remember is, and I agree, is similar things, talking about diversity and housing is, I'm curious how the community would react to someone wanted to put a duplex south of Olive and things like that. It's not as common, but it would add the diversity. Plus, often we would hear somebody wants to put an apartment building, everyone says, but the schools can't take it, which we haven't seen, like when we talk about the Oliver and things like that. But I think some of it is fear of
Mhm.
unknown or fear of false things. So I think it's also, as part of our campaign, is educating people to the benefits and the why these things would be good. Because if we price everyone out and we become homogeneous, I don't think it bodes well for the long term.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, Carol.
So another problem, which is in some ways a nice one to have, you own property here already, in that the market itself, the very big market out there, is driving our home prices and our land prices up. And so
Mhm.
our housing affordability goes up. It's much more expensive to live in Olivette today because of demand. It's in the school district, it's part of
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And I don't think any of us who are homeowners want to change it.
Yeah.
But what that means in terms of finding a means to help fill that gap within
Mhm.
our community makes it much more challenging. It's hard for a developer to make the numbers work.
Mhm.
If you want to
Yeah.
keep the cost of housing down,
You can't
but the
pay for the
land
land.
prices are
Yeah.
exploding.
Yeah.
It can't do it.
Mhm.
And I think that is a big part of where we're gonna run into problems in the future is that we have the benefits
Yeah.
of having created this wonderful demand and all of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we see the gap
Yeah.
and we want to find a way to plug it. And unfortunately, the market is
Doesn't
kind of
do that.
beyond us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Agree. But we're thinking about that. But yeah, we're studying that too. But it's not easy and yeah, and there aren't developers locally who typically do that. So, yeah. Anything else from your recollection of the exercise? I think a lot of the trends that were chosen lined up with what we've seen so far in the survey and from other conversations. They're consistent with what we are seeing in the results in the citizen survey so far. And yeah, some of the same themes.
Were you surprised by any of the results, even the ones that didn't rise to the top?
Are you thinking like the smart technology and yeah, we worked with city staff this morning and there were a couple trends that I asked them to think about that weren't on this list because I think they could potentially have impact on city services. So thinking about AI and robotics and ways that automation is just changing how we do everything. And as you play that out over, I mean, I don't get it and it kind of freaks me out. But if you play it out over 10, 15 years, I mean, what's going to, that's going to have an impact on how we provide services and the kind of data that we have at our fingertips. So that smart technology and kind of the Internet of Things, the connectivity that is going to change how we do business. And then climate change was the other one that, more extreme wet weather, more extreme weather period, hot weather or cold weather. So how does that change the demand for city services? So when we met with city staff, we were helping them focus on how these trends might affect their work and the services that the city provides. And so we threw those trends into the mix for their conversation.
I don't think that just pertains to how things affect city services. The city has a fairly good control over the built environment from zoning and whatnot. And I think the question becomes, what can the city do as a business overall to reduce its climate footprint? But what can the city also do as a zoning authority to help that? Right? So it's not just reacting, it's taking action to help prevent it.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, were interesting to me. So, a couple that I was curious to hear about, and I wasn't able to make it to the in-person advisory committee, but so I'm not sure if you guys heard discussions around these couple, but was kind of the future of work, just because of what we saw happening with COVID and what I think you're seeing around here is that not everybody is going back to the office. And so what does that mean for the office buildings or, different buildings in terms of, are people working from home? And then if more people are working from home, then they have more sense of where they choose to live. Because, some people, if you don't necessarily have to go into your office, maybe you would choose to live somewhere else. And then another one that I was a little bit curious about because the school district is so big, is the future of education and some of the things on that tied into, technology. And again, this like virtual world that we're continuing to dive into. And so either whether that's how does the school district change or how do the classrooms change, but also again, what if you don't necessarily have to go into school all the time? Or just different, I don't know how schools will change with we really had to adapt and jump into all this virtual learning, and whether or not all that will stick, definitely large parts of it will, and along with the AI and stuff, and how is that all being integrated into schools, I think is something really interesting to think about.
I think that's going to impact rural America much more than it will impact metropolitan America.
Mhm. Yeah, probably so.
I think it came through, but maybe not in the way I thought, is housing affordability. Because we, on the surveys and in conversations we've had, we hear a lot about affordability of housing, which was one of the options. And I think what the groups gravitated toward was housing choice. So focusing, which includes housing affordability, but in the context of a community that offers lots of choices. And so it was there just in a way that was not exactly like what I would have
Well,
anticipated. Yeah.
And we had to pick a few. I mean, not everything can be
Yeah.
great. So I mean, to me, I feel extremely strongly about that, but you could argue housing choice, increased density and housing types. To me, housing types includes affordable housing.
Yeah.
But so I think they're all lumped together in
Yeah.
some ways, because
Yeah.
you could say I want affordable housing, but no more choice, different types of choices or density.
Right.
Then that means our prices dropped. which is,
Right.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think at the longer people play this game, the more they're like, well, it's so related. Everything's so related, you know, and there's a lot of overlap between these things. And so that it kind of, it starts to, you start to notice that there is overlap.
Well, the truth of the matter is I could not afford to live here if I did not purchase a home in 1990
Mhm.
at a price that is 1/7 of its value now.
Yeah.
And a lot of us that are sitting around this table, you know, we came here with that opportunity for us, and I don't see my younger self having that opportunity to come back to this wonderful community.
Mhm.
And that's a bother to me, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's why when you talk to residents, I've lived here for 25 years. I've lived here for 40 years. And
Mhm.
it's, they couldn't go anyplace else.
Mhm. In Olivette, like they couldn't sell their house and get a different house in Olivette.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or any place in the metropolitan area,
Mm-hmm.
equal or above all of that. So
Mhm.
that's why they like to stay here. And that's why people grow up here and then they leave, but then they come back,
Mm-hmm.
except for our kids. But that's okay. But
You're not in the basement, right?
they're not,
They're not, that's a good thing.
but I think that's what Missy was saying. A lot of us couldn't afford to buy a
Mhm.
house
Yeah. Yeah.
now, where it used to be if you were the city manager, you were required to live in Olivette,
Mhm.
and that's changed too over the
Mm-hmm.
last couple decades.
Give me a house too.
Pardon?
Give me a house to live in too.
They used to.
Take part of work.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
thank you.
Yeah. So we're going to be keeping, we're not going to totally throw away the other trends, but we'll be thinking of those and mindful of those as we move forward in planning. Is just the ones that are top of mind for how we want to plan for the city. The next thing that the advisory committee is going to do is they're going to play a game that has a lot of different strategies to it. We're going to throw some different scenarios at the advisory committee and say, which strategies do you need to be resilient through these types of changes? And so the trends will kind of help inform our thinking on what kinds of strategies we throw into the mix. So next, we're going to take a look at some of the early feedback that we've gotten on strengths of the community, weaknesses of the community from the community survey. And then I'm going to show you results from the staff survey too. Some of you did our survey coming into this meeting. And so thank you for those who did. A lot did not. So it wasn't enough to report results for you all, but I can give little pieces of what I heard from each of the groups, if that makes sense. So I know we've thrown a lot of surveys at you, so I think we might have hit the survey wall as we asked for feedback for this meeting. But taking a look at strengths, a lot of consistency here. On the left, you have the public responses, and at this time that I pulled this data, there were 189 responses. Not surprising that K through 12 public schools are considered a strength by 82% of the people. Location, also a top strength. Diversity and inclusion, parks and rec amenities, and then safety. And then your city staff had very similar results on their survey, so we shared those with them this morning. The only slight difference, they identified sense of community. Several of them identified sense of community as a strength, and that was replaced by diversity and inclusion in the public results. So I don't think any surprises there. On weaknesses, what we hear a lot about in the survey, and we have a couple several questions that get at this in different ways, but people are real interested in having more options for restaurants and for retail and for entertainment within Olivette. And so that's something we want to understand a little bit more to understand what they want. But our sense is that it's more small scale. You know, they want things that are special and unique, boutique stores, family-owned restaurants, or just locally owned restaurants, not the box stores. So that's our sense of what people want, but we'll be asking more questions. Is that your sense of what people want to their, yeah, you're nodding your head. So,
Well, the other thing I would like to say though, is that we should have a lot of that coming online very shortly. In other words, that's what's planned down at the corner at 170 and Olive. That's what's planned in some of these newer buildings that are going up here. There will be retail opportunities there. So
yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, we've already known that was an issue, and I think, you know, we just
Mhm.
can't bring the supply up, you know, as you say, you can't bring the supply.
You can't
up
make it
overnight.
happen, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, so that's, and I think related to that, attracting and retaining new business is probably related to that desire for more retail, restaurant, entertainment options. Housing affordability shows up as a weakness. It also shows up as a strength. It rated a little bit lower, but some people say it's a strength. Some people say it's a weakness. So I
Well,
think
we're
it depends
cheaper
on your
than Leduc, but
perspective.
we're more expensive than other places.
Yes, I know it's a very relative thing, right? So Olive Boulevard is identified as a weakness, 29% of people, arts, culture and history, 27%, and then attracting young professionals. And that's for the public. And these are results so far. So I think we could see movement in these things as we move forward. I hope we see our participation getting a little more diverse as we move into the community workshops. So these are your homeowners, remember? Caveat on what you're seeing there, but I think that probably you would expect to see these things. Is there any comments on kind of what you're seeing there? So the way that we use these, we want to build on your strengths and you want to kind of address your weaknesses. And so as we think about where we need to focus in the strategic plan, comprehensive plan, your strategic thinking.
Are the
yeah.
elected officials, are we considered city staff? Are we considered the public?
You?
Yeah,
who are you? You're not here. This is the city staff and then the public. The elected officials took the survey, but only a couple of them did.
So you sent something when you asked us to complete before we came tonight.
Mhm.
Where am I on there? Who am I on that? Or
You're-
that doesn't include what you sent us to do?
No, so I did not summarize the elected official or the PCDC results because there wasn't enough participation to do it in a meaningful way. So I didn't have a majority in either case.
I did
Yeah.
not.
And okay, and PC and some people who took the survey skipped questions. And so this is why. But I'm not faulting anyone. That's just
But if
the
we
explanation.
But if we fit everyone in the room tonight, if we filled out it online through the community.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, then you're in the public. Oh, for sure.
Right.
Yes.
okay.
And so in that way, you're there, Missy. You're part of it because I know you did the survey. You're the public. Yeah.
I find it amazing that even though it's only 10 on city staff, it came down to totally equal.
Yeah.
They work together.
There was collusion.
Yeah.
There was collusion that happened.
I have a quick question,
Yeah.
if you don't mind.
Yeah.
You know, once we identify all these issues, are you gonna also, I think you led on to it earlier about there's drawbacks, like with more development, increased development, sometimes there's people that don't like all of this.
Yeah.
So will you get into kind of, we've had kind of some spark of development in the last, 5-10 years? How do people like it?
Mhm.
Or people want more?
Yeah.
Or we run into issues with density, on Pcdc, we run into, some people, adjacent neighbors.
Yeah.
To these big developments, the
Yeah.
height is always an issue.
Mhm.
And then just with any big developments, you always run into the utilities, stormwater.
Yeah.
Things like that.
So I think what the process will give you is what the overall, a sense of what the overall community wants. And so maybe, that allows for density in certain areas on Olive. And then the property owners are still going to be the property owners and the adjacent folks are still not going to let, but you have the overall community sense of what can go where. What we're seeing, like we haven't asked the detailed question yet about density, because I think that's going to happen as we make recommendations and put something specific out for the community to react to, which is more summer. What we put in the community survey now was a question about the direction of the comprehensive plan from last time, which called for a dynamic sense of place in Olivette, focused on Olive, which is about redeveloping Olive Boulevard. And right now, 80% of people say we like that direction, continue that direction. So I know you hear a lot of, we're seeing traffic, we're worried about apartments, and I mean, all that is still true, but according to the 211 people that have spoken so far, they're say 80% are saying keep doing, something. Yeah.
And I think that Tuesday night at our last meeting, Bruce McGregor said it best. He says, we waited and we waited and we wanted things to happen in stages and suddenly. bam,
It's all
It's
here.
all happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
So when I hear from residents, that's what I'm hearing. It's like the traffic on Olive is terrible because you've got all these different projects. Well, this
Mhm.
project was supposed to be done 4 years ago, and this one was supposed to be done
Yeah.
2 years ago. And I think it's post-pandemic issues and that some are moving slower than we had hoped.
Mhm,
But I
mhm.
think as they come to fruition, people are excited about it, but they're right now just, so
Right.
I see people, or I hear from people that they're ebbing and flowing through the community and zigzagging or whatever to avoid Olive. And I said, well, that's the best thing to do right now. But
Yeah.
the general consensus I hear is people are excited about the development.
Yeah, that's good. And when I think about how you're going to look in just a couple years, like the community center's open and these park improvements are done and Olive Crossing is done and the Gateway Tip is taken. It's a really different place in
Oh,
just
that's
3
all good.
years.
We're ready to move on.
You're already done it. Yeah. So something I did want to make sure that we said today was to compliment you on all the great work that has happened since 2006. We got a great tour of town today. Carlos and Don spent a couple hours with us, getting to all sections of town, lots of neighborhoods, but we saw so many things that have changed over the last, the life of your last comprehensive plan, certainly. Little things like improving public realm at Olive and Dealman with just hardscape improvements and landscaping. Big things like Olive Crossing, new road through the industrial park, Dealman Industrial Park, that sparked higher level of development there. So these incremental things are a really big deal over time, and you can see the benefit of what you've done and decisions that you've made. And so it seems to us like what we're seeing now is your community just wants more of it. Like the direction seems to be, the momentum is there, and the direction seems to be something that the community likes, just next level. That's what we see right now. Yeah.
Okay, so I would agree with you.
Uh-huh.
that we're
But you're gonna
definitely-
say but.
Yeah, I do have
Come
a
on,
but.
Carol.
Yeah, so here's the but, and in PCDC, we deal with this all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't think we have a really good answer.
Mhm.
okay? But because Olive Street Road is an old commercial road, okay? And the lot depth is extremely narrow, okay? And we have residential, much of it single family, right behind. All of the redevelopment that we do on Olive Street Road in many ways adversely impacts those immediately
Mhm.
adjacent neighbors.
Mhm.
And we struggle with that
Yeah.
each and every time.
Yeah.
okay? And, we're dealing with every time, every,
Mhm.
okay?
Yeah.
And we don't have, I don't think we have good options, shall we say, that we can suggest things or, or methodology where we can have the neighborhood
Mhm.
work with the Olive Street Road developers and try and start to work things out. We've done some of that, and I think what we've been able to accomplish is admirable.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I'd love to see something perhaps more formalized or being able to graphically show a neighborhood, these are, might be some options
That you
to think
should.
about
Mhm.
that we can
Mhm.
all kind of, get our arms around and say, well, at least these are some positive
Yeah.
kinds of steps that you could take when you're thinking about redeveloping to greater
Yeah.
intensity along Olive Street Road. So we have to find the balance where we're
Mhm.
protecting those existing homeowners and
Mhm.
residents. But at the same
Yeah.
time, we want to facilitate commercial redevelopment.
Yeah.
And Carol, we did try to address that at the last land plan in 2004, 5, and 6 conversation, and it's called depth. And this community did not want to, I mean, we clearly had a line. This is a depth it can go to that would lessen the impact on residential. Do we want to go and do that depth? The Oliver's a prime example. There were a couple other homes on Freezy that could have been purchased to allow that better depth and that distance between resident and commercial. But, again, it is the market and it wasn't able to be successful. And I don't know a community that's built the way that we have that has never had the flavor for depth, how we, that would be an interesting challenge for me to see completed in this next 20-year, frame of what are we gonna look like?
But
That's
see,
a hard one.
I agree with you that we have, it's not just a question of do we increase or decrease the depth of the use, but what happens in that narrow space where one completely different use type meets the other. And that's what we've got to face. No matter how far back you had that discussion, you still have that same problem. And I value both sides of the argument. And then we need some way to better allow them to coexist.
And I think that.
I think the city does a great job and has been doing a good
Yeah,
job with it, but go ahead.
The 2006 plan recognized that, and it said, it identifies it as one of the principal challenges to implementing this dynamic sense of space, place vision was going to be that transition area between residential and commercial. And it identified or outlined some objectives for the city to pursue to try to mitigate that. You're always going to have somebody's backyard, no matter how much of depth you acquire, you're going to end up in the Laguna's backyard and if you continue, end up in Indian Meadows backyard. And it's a continuous thing. But the objectives in the plan led us to bring the buildings to the street, as opposed to what we did with Walgreens to say you have to be 50 feet back. We want to push the buildings away from the street. Now we're shifting the buildings towards the street. We did that with the Oliver, we did that with Firestone. And therefore placing the parking as that transition area and the buffer wall to help mitigate, that lower noise or that ground noise as opposed to the building in there. Then we found there are some negative effects in doing so. We found out, wow, the sign's really bright at Firestone. Well, yes, because it's up by the street as opposed to back, back behind the parking field. So there are these different balancing things and such, but the 2006 plan recognized that this plan is going to face the same challenge that, this plan is about the community goal, not the neighborhood goal. And there's where that distinction happens.
Right.
Everyone's gonna have, not in my backyard, and it's reasonable. I mean, we hear it all the time, and it's part of the process, but we can't design, or we would have no backyard to design to if we followed that.
Yeah, I'm just saying that it'd be great if, understanding all of that, if we had some tools.
But
To help.
that's where I think chapter 428.
That's part of it,
Mhm.
but I'm not sure. We have some of those pieces, Carl, so I'm saying we totally ignored the issue. But I'd like to see us take it yet even a step further.
Yeah.
Okay, because I think we've got the plan, we've got the planning tools out there that we needed to make these things happen. But I think we need one step further, and I'm not sure I know what that is.
And it gets scary because is that the engaging with the neighborhood? Because then all of a sudden that table becomes bigger, and it's difficult to get something done even within just the realm of the commission or the council. To broaden that, it's a hard balancing act.
Right, I don't have the answer. I'm just posing it as, it's something that the planning commission deals with
All the time.
constantly.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear some of your suggestions.
Okay.
Taking another look.
Yeah.
at it.
We'll take a look at that. Okay. All right. Well, let's, our next thing on our agenda, we're still gonna do it. It might be a little bit more compressed. 2 hours goes by so fast. But so we're gonna have 2 small group discussions. And I think let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So I think so she's still here. So we'll take, why don't we take Maxine over? Will be our group over here working with April. And then Robert, and over this way, you'll work with me and Gabby. And then if Carlos, do you have to sit there to watch the Zoom? Well, I was just gonna have you sit with one of the groups just to listen. And then Dawn with the other, just to be there.
You're not blending council with some others. You're
Oh, I
putting
hadn't, you know what?
PCDC
I
over
did not
there
notice that
and
there was,
council over here.
okay. Thank you, Missy.
Go to numbers.
Okay,
1, 2,
let's,
3,
thank
whatever.
you. Okay, well,
Okay.
we're gonna number off. So, so Greg, start. You're 1.
Am I 3?
1.
1.
2.
2, 1.
Okay. All right. Thank you for saying that. We should have noticed that. Okay, so 1 over here with April, and 2 over here in this corner with Gabby and I.
Because people come there and talk about it. And I was out there, there were really good around there, but I'm there now. He knows that when I to work on the time when I was one time they obviously was on one day. So he's on the radio. From the picture you see the play area, you see the dining area. So you really decide it all. You can have a plan all out. That's correct. That's the problem. Before, the things the adults can call, like, meanwhile, how I, how here, what do we have to do? And it's going to be an opportunity for to touch someone about allowing someone to do it. We can hold my question. Well, when they think we don't want those lights, the commercial raining down on you, and to, yeah, I'm worried. Do that. But right, hearing all of that, you've got those.
You know what we need? More. That would. But I mean, that's, it's showing the community for the future economic development of the city. It's showing that the city is investing in the art. So,
Yeah, yeah. Because their kids aren't in school either. Most of them probably don't have kids in school. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
sidewalk, I mean, I just walk away.
Okay, everybody, we're gonna do a speed round of wrap up, and then, I wanna go around real quick and just ask you all to tell us what, like an idea you were most excited about, or something that you talked about with your group that you think, was particularly difficult, was already done. Okay. Yeah. Oh. Okay, microphone. Okay, this works better anyway. All right, so real quick for what we talked about in my group, we focused on two topics. We focused on economic development and then community identity. And we talked about a lot of the things that have really worked over the last several years, coming together and having kind of a snowball effect. So that, oh, thanks, Don. So now we can actually have a, yeah. So the housing demand that's happening, the attracting new residents that is happening is leading to more amenities that the community wants. And that seems to have quite a bit of momentum right now and a bit of a snowball effect happening. So we talked about that. And then in terms of what we might want for the future for economic development, thought about maybe standards, design guidelines or design standards of some kind, having a signature element or thought given to some consistency in across different development, not to make them the same, but to have characteristics that were in common to create a more unified look. So we didn't have specifics there, but just an idea of that. And we talked about public art as a way to also create that consistency and appearance. And then that turned us into our second topic, which was community identity and ways to build on community identity. So we talked about things that have really helped that in recent years: parks, sidewalks, having the new community center, this building, and then continuing thinking about that with thinking about how we can work on development on Olive as redevelopment occurs, to bring buildings in front, parking and back, to improve the appearance of how that road looks and feels. And then we talked about all the great events that Parks is having and how important they are to community building, Puzzle Palooza, Holly Festival, all kinds of things. And saying that it's really all these things have really created a more cohesive sense of place over the last few years. So that's your speed round. Anything my group would want to shout out and add? I know. Yeah.
Okay. Speed round for me. My group focused on housing first, and then we got into transportation stuff. But we talked about how some of the ways that the housing stock has improved or changed over the years with reinvestment and redevelopment, as well as new apartments coming in, even though maybe they are pricey, but bringing money to the city. We also talked about how we have seen and hope to continue to see more young families. That adds to kind of the long-term sustainability of our community. And then, what the different housing needs are for families. Eventually, young families may start out in apartments, but eventually they will need more space if they're having kids or pets, as my generation is starting to lean more towards, and needing a yard and things like that. So how can we create options for that? Then we got into transportation and talked about some of the great additions we've seen as far as the sidewalk infrastructure and network expanding, as well as the trails. And some of the work that has been done to improve flow and traffic management along Olive Boulevard with the elimination of all of the different aprons along Olive, reducing conflict points. And yeah, I'll say there. Anybody want to add anything that I missed quick?
Go for it.
I just want to mention one thing that we brought up in our group, group two, yeah, is that we need to engage with some of these apartment buildings because they house a lot of people there. And they need to have a voice too, and we'd like to hear what they say.
That was Jody's
was
contribution from
Jody's.
online.
Yeah, so that, I thought that was really important.
And I've also been trying to stress to the employers I've been talking to that their experience, their employees' experience of Olivette is very relevant as well.
Okay, so it is 9:02. Carlos, can I ask him a question? Just to have one idea? Okay, before we go, okay. Because I was under strict orders for 9 and I'm 2 minutes past. Okay, Greg, can I start with you? Just one thing you thought was interesting or something that we should keep in mind for the comprehensive plan, something you're excited about? That it's 9:02 and you're leaving soon? No. Yeah,
I'm interested in the sustainability, more specifically, what the city can do to contribute to climate situation. So.
Okay.
I'm excited about trying to get something in the plan about that.
yeah. Okay, Rick?
I've got two things is the neighborhoods and the sidewalks to make it a walkable, to continue that. Also, I'm very concerned about safety in our city. Our city's very safe now, but I want to look to the future. A lot of people feel safe,
Mhm,
but they live in here.
mhm.
But we've still have some knuckleheads that come to our community in the middle of the night. We need to be able to
Okay,
take care of the residents and the businesses.
okay, okay. Thank you, Missy.
Feel safe. I was locked down in my business today because of Keno Plaza. Who would have thought? You know, to me, it's still about Olive Boulevard.
Okay.
I still think we need to improve, tear down, rebuild. I know I've been told why it would not be possible, but I still feel that, you know, that is still where we need to improve ourselves because the housing and the other things, I think, are the market and they automatically come. You know, I would like to see something where if they're gonna go up high and tall and do these apartment complexes, I would like to see what is called mixed use. Have the bottom level be an area where if you're gonna live in this place, people can go to the first floor, they can get a haircut, they can go to groceries, they can get certain things within their own little community. And so I still would like to see that vision and improvements on Olive, not always make it retail, make it livable and have retail.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Knox stole some of my thunder because I was gonna say sidewalks. I think we've done a good job, but it's only a drop in the bucket about some of the new sidewalks because there's still sidewalks that are 3 feet wide or 2.5, you know, on Price. I know we're gonna be doing something down the road, but there's still sidewalks that need to go to the 5 feet that we are now doing. The safety issue was also my other thing, but mine was on a different place. Because we become a more walkable community and people come flying through like down Dealman Road, I think we need to also improve, starting to create more crosswalks or the signs. When you drive through Oak Estates, I noticed today once says state law, there's a sign and an arrow. You must stop for pedestrians. I think that we need more of those where the path and between some of the areas where people are walking, when they have to cross a major a street where cars are coming through, that we need to start doing some of those kinds of things for safety, not just for the adults that are walking, but for the children that are riding their bikes through. Because one of the comments said, you know, I love that my children can walk to their friends. Well, you want to know that they can cross Dealman Road or cross Price Road or to go to their friends.
Mhm.
I know I wasn't part of that group, but I really do like the idea of incorporating public art with developments. Or incorporating that theme. I think that was into some development. So I think that's really neat. I see that we're going to a more dense, you know, a denser neighborhood and stuff. But I am also concerned about the impacts to the neighbors and as well as stormwater issues.
So actually, I was thinking about Jody's comment about how do we engage the newer residents that are in the apartments? And I was thinking at the same time about something I saw just last week. A woman was walking her kids home from a bottom school and they were heading north to the apartments on the side of Olive. And she was obviously a Muslim woman with two little kids. And I thought, isn't that neat? You know, neat for Olivette.
Mhm.
But how do we get her involved in our discussion?
Mm.
You know, I'd love to get comments from her, she and her neighbors about what we're doing. And, you know, they know, I've never seen them at a planning commission meeting. I doubt she ever comes to council meeting. How do we get them involved? And I think Jody's point that she made to us is right on. And it's something that is extremely important. I'd love to see someday that those people, if they want to stay in Olivet, they find a way to stay and raise their kids and, you know,
Mhm.
and be happy citizens and residents of Olivet.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mine would be sidewalks and Olive Boulevard, more sidewalks on every street, every residential street, and then Olive Boulevard completely redone, looking like it's a new city, not an old rundown city.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I would piggyback on here, but one thing, just to mention something that hasn't been discussed yet, how are we gonna leverage technology? I think technology's gotta be a big part of this because it's everywhere. And maybe part of the community outreach things, we all carry around these phones. Maybe we have an app that's set up for the push notifications, really get people involved. I don't know, does that survey go out in different languages? Or is it- Yeah, so I'm just little stuff like that.
Mhm.
Go
Mhm.
along with.
Me, 1 second. We've, the council met with, I can't say it.
Sounds like, well, we want to hear it now. Sounds like it's good things on the horizon.
Disappointment in his voice.
The chief is always, I've never had a problem saying what I mean. But then we talked about getting information out, like the newsletters and stuff like that in different languages, or exploring how we could do that. So you're right on target with that too. And how we could talk to the people of our community, because it's not all English.
Well, why aren't we going to their apartments and setting it up and meeting with them there?
That's something that Rise
Yeah.
is like, that's. the
Okay.
whole of
Okay.
Yeah, very.
I think one of the things I'm most excited about is being able to take the things we're interested in, like DE&I and, you know, housing options, and trying to make tough decisions. They're not always gonna be popular, but I think, you know, we were talking about in our group, it might mean the city economically having to chip in to help to find more affordable type housing opportunities. And you have to be aggressive in that, because if we just assume it'll work itself out, I don't think it will, because the market bears to what it has and people get priced out, and then we
Mm.
might improve certain areas, but none of that's gonna change unless, I hate to say it, we have to be direct and actionable against it. And not always popular, but not always economically ideal at first, but I think it pays off in the long run.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, and thanks for letting us go a little bit longer. It was really great to hear from all of you. I'm excited about your plan. So next steps for us, we are going to promote the heck out of this community workshop, including going to apartment complexes and handing out flyers and seeing if we can catch people.
When we have programs like Party in the Park, have you thought about bringing iPads or different?
We're gonna
laptops or
come
something so
to,
that People can do the surveys. right
Yeah,
there?
so we're gonna be at Party in the Park with Gabby and I will be there, a couple of people from Rise, and then Carlos and Dawn are gonna be there. So we're gonna be there in force, like with the survey and
Paper versions, probably iPads, nobody ever really wants.
but QR codes, they'll scan, do it on their phone for us. And so we'll have signage with the QR codes and
What about
really be
school-
encouraging.
School pickups or things like that. mean, I know not every school would be in all of that, like Old Bonham, I assume everyone in the Old Bonham's in all of that. Maybe I'm wrong,
Most,
maybe not, but even
I
so,
don't know.
they take place in all of that, and so could, at school pickup, I talked to 40 different parents at a time or something like that.
have thought about too.
we should get you some flyers.
That's fine. No, give them to me, I'll. hand them
Yeah.
out.
So we are,
There are also those books,
Yeah.
you know,
bookmarks.
We do
no,
have.
no, 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 not the bookmarks,
No,
like the
the,
community book, like
yeah,
things.
community,
Like, stick 'em in
library,
there,
community book
like
library.
library, local library things, you know, just.
We,
Yeah.
We do have some
Yeah.
coverage. And if I could just take a quick hand, raise your hand, who's seen the pavement markers? Well, I know you, you guys, nothing? No? Oh, okay, thank you.
The stickers on the.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would have to look down. They are not, they're not the yard signs, pavement markers, but that's good. Not as many as I'd like.
So we have flyers that we're finishing up and we'll send you all electronic versions as soon as they're ready. And then we'll have print versions here that you can pick up too, by early next week. So they're in progress. Yard signs are in progress. And so we'll share them with you as soon as they're done. And we'd love some help in getting them spread around, your neighborhoods and in popular places in town. So. Mhm. Yeah. So we're excited.
I would like to thank everyone for coming tonight on behalf of myself and Rob, and I also would like to especially thank Beth and Gabby and April for your presentation and everyone for their time, and I'll be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn. Second.
Good night, Jody.
Thank you. You guys really
Thank you.